It's day 2 of the candidates, the search for the next challenger to Gukesh D. They're in Cyprus and we're going in today with the full shebang. All 4 games, another day of drama. We're starting with Anish Giri against Fabiano Caruana. Giri lost yesterday to Prague. Fabi won against Hikaru. And already on move 3, we get some weirdness. Look at this. An incredibly rare move. No one does it. They do this, right? Well, it's a kind of anti-Catalan move. Apparently, this is the idea. Giri goes for the Catalan stuff. We see takes, bishop g2. And now you can play a quick rook b8. Because you moved the knight out the way. And so you're prepared to go b5. This is the deep ninja stuff. Giri says you're not having it so easily. And so Fabi puts the pawn here instead. Looking to get the bishop out. Now we see this knight drop back. Going for the pawn, of course. Opening up some stuff here. Fabi says let's go a5. You're going to see why. Takes bishop a6. With the pawn back here, well, maybe you're running into some nibble stuff. So he goes in this order. It's some deep stuff. Now they're sticking a pony on the edge, which is apparently terrible. No one knows what's going on, except the guys in the studio, because they're actually really good at chess. So I definitely watched the Peter Svidler and Jan Gustafsson recap stuff. Vichy was in there. We get a check thrown in. Fabi decides that it's better to put the bishop on d2 before taking the knight. Like I said, it's deep. Let's see how things went. He gives up the bishops for the knight. He decides it was more dangerous. And now he plonks this one on e7. Both players castle. Beautiful king safety fist bump. Exploded out over the board. Sorry, phone. Let me silence that one. And now we see this pawn push on. Before you can say...
mushrooms.
Pawn captures is played, bishop takes back, lasering down this diagonal here, but Fabi's got something prepared. The very direct advance of the c-pawn. And what we now get is a bit of a liquidation. d5 would seem to be the most testing try, but not played. Giri puts this one here, and all of this stuff now goes into the blender. The knight lands on c5, an absolute monster seahorse. Sometimes they call the d-file the chopping block. It's what we see here. You can see where it's headed. Pressure on the pawn, yes, but Fabi's got it covered. If you now take and win that pawn, the rook gets too active. Bishop on a suboptimal square when the knight's hopping into d2. Something like this. Quick sample line. Pawn's mopped up. You couldn't cover it. And it leads to a draw. That was one sample. So Giri didn't take the pawn. He plays f4, gives the king some room. Now we see rook d6. And this is how the game ended, I'm afraid. Threefold repetition. Draw agreed. 30 moves. Not the most exciting. Let's go to the next. We've got Yavakir Cinderov kicking off with the king pawn. Best by test. He won yesterday. The great Matthias Bluebaum is now going for the 14 draw sweep. There's a few jokes going around about that on social media. And he plays a Petrov. Very solid, but not so much of a surprise. He's the weakest player in the tournament, or maybe Esipenko is, but I think it's Bluebaum, right? He's not typically at the level of these guys. He wants to keep it really solid. This is an interesting kind of Magnus move, which he showed in the World Championship against Fabiano way back in 2018. Some quirky stuff. Headed for d5. Bluebaum shuts it down, and this one's kicked out of dodge. The ladies leave the board here. Very, very steady position, but white's going to push. You could go d5 there. Stop the knight coming to c4. It can't come to c2. Not without exchanging the bishops. But black decides no. I don't want to give up my bishops. Double your pawns. This was played. Both players breaking all the rules. Who knows what's going on here. Spinning back to the centre. Bishop drops off. And there's a really critical moment coming in just a few moves here. An opportunity to go for a very fascinating pawn structure. Bishop bouncing around now to h3, and after this one's challenged on g5, you could take. This wasn't played. Rook can't take, or you run into bishop h3. f5 not possible when the knight and bishop converge on the square. So pawn takes, but then there's this, and this kind of stuff. Exchange the bishops. You know, something like this. This is absolute best play with black. But even with best play, you can come here, you can come here. White gets a nice knight on the e5 square. Better pawn structure. And there's just some little ideas here. Possible potential pawn breaks. The black king's not ideally placed. This is an opportunity to press. But not played. We see bishop h3 immediately. But it allows this takes and change of the pawn structure. Now white still stands better. Bit of space, more active pieces, bishop pair, but harder to win. The board's closed. We see this one finally enter the game. Bishop e3, rook e7. Let's keep rumbling through here. The knight, of course, wants to occupy this outpost. Although it's a bit tricky at the minute. You've got some pawn structure issues. Keeps an eye on g4. King f3 played. King d7. Bishop drops back. More rooks going into the blender. And now we see the pawn break. Finally, you've got to do something. Or else play over here. f5 in response. Are we going to see the overpowered en passant? Well, not the best, right? This is a takes with check. So you have to react there. Takes on h5 played. I mean, the en passant was actually possible. But we won't go down that line. Knight takes was played. Bishop d2. Now we see the rook hit the h-file. And although it looks like you're stepping into a world of pain and pins, this is the point. The knight will cover the rook. The rook will hit the rook. This was played. And it's a very forcing, liquidating line. You're a piece down with white, but the pawn is too dangerous. Can't be left unchecked. You have to step in front. If you try and step back, stay with the knight, well then there's this kind of thing, and the pawn runs. You can't get back. You can check, but the king actually steps here. Not here, by the way, or then this, and you're about to set up check stuff, and okay, not perfect. It's level, but white's better with king f2. So this is no good. This is no good. Rook g7. Pawn's mopped up in just a second, and once again, we get the dreaded rook repetition here. That's 2 draws down. Wei versus Praggnanandhaa now is where we have to look for fireworks. French defense from Prague, signalling a fight right. He wants a kind of imbalanced game straight from the offset, not like the Petrov. He goes for the classical variation. Pawn pushes on here, dropping back f4, and of course the classic counterpunch against the centre. All 4 ponies now in the game. Bishop streaming in. Now you can take here, and there's some very long lines. Queen coming to b6. Some of it's forced into a draw, much of it is, but you have to know 1,000,001 lines with the black pieces. Prague doesn't want that. He goes bishop e7. A much richer position now. Richer pieces on the board. Different plans. This is unusual. Normally bishop e2 is far more common. This one's more aggressive. Pointing at the king, and watch this. After castles, you do have the option to take. Knight takes. Bishop takes. Bear with me. Why would you give up that bishop? Well, it's to land. Bishop takes on h7 check. The Greek gift. Now this is surely leading to a mate. You can't go g6, f5. None of those are any good. You still get mated. Rook e8's actually the move to run away. Check. King goes. Queen h5's actually best. Go queen c7. If check, the king runs. And white actually is worse in this position, unbelievably. You can keep running with the king. And this is the thing. If you're going to go in for this stuff, you have to really know the lines. And Wei decides, no way am I going for this. When Prague's incredibly prepared. Let's just castle. Now we see pawn to f6 to nibble away at the structure. Pawn takes played. Knight recaptures. eyeing up this juicy square, and king h1. Steps off this exposed diagonal. If I could draw arrows. The king lifted the kilt. b6 prepares to develop, but not just in the standard way. Watch what Prague's got planned. Some craziness. Taking the pawn no good, by the way. This is good for white. Let's crack on here. We see queen c7, protecting this knight simply. Obviously you don't want to take either really. Looks lovely and delicious for white. So rook e1's on the board now, bishop d6 and knight takes is selected. The problem is the pressure on the d4 pawn. And then e5 is attacked too many times. So this is why takes. You could have also considered this first up, but this is the game. Bishop now dropping back to e2, manoeuvring into f3, then preparing knight e2, c3, that kind of thing, but it all takes time. Prague goes for a weird little rook lift here. Now bishop f3, and probably here, Prague should be playing for pawn c4. It's the best move in the position. You take the pressure off the centre. Now what to do with white? If you try this knight e2 plan here, there's b5. The rook could swing to f7. Black's actually starting to take over the game here. Compare this to the game, we get the immediate rook af7, and it allows this pawn f5 shot. Now, if you take, there's incredible pressure on the centre, with d takes on c5, and the d5 pawn is weak. Here's one sample line. These lines don't exist when you've already pushed c4. So this is the big difference. This is why f5 was now played to liberate this guy. We see pawn c4 here, explosive but too late. The bishop staring at a pawn, activates itself, Prague copies, pins here, trying to win control of the e4 square, queen e2 steps away, and now after captures, we don't get the standard. Pawn recaptures, this one's flicked in, and you're threatening to take that rook with a check. So the best move here is sidestepping. This is how the game went. Bishop recaptured, rook takes, no time to Botez gambit. Here comes that noble steed, and unfortunately, after this and this and this, we get one of these dreaded moments. The opposite coloured bishops, all the heavy pieces leaving the board, and it's one of those opposite coloured bishops positions which is not convertible to a win, like we saw yesterday in Fabi versus Hikaru. This one truly is dead drawn. Let's shake hands, everybody. Go home. Move 46, the third draw of the day. It's all on Esipenko and Nakamura. Now, obviously, Hikaru had a painful loss yesterday. Can he bounce back from that? Andre also lost, by the way, as well, to Cinderov. So they're both looking to get started. This is the English opening. An opening, by the way, I'm literally learning all this week on Lotus Chess. Do join me. I want to hit the adept level of rating on Lotus Chess in that opening by the end of the candidate. So do download it below. Join me on that journey. The best way to do it is just pick one opening, keep working on it, and then let's see where we can get by the end of the week. Oh, and they do end games now as well, which is incredible. I haven't seen that anywhere else. Link below. It's incredibly good. E6 from Hikaru here. And honestly, I got to say, Hikaru is just looking for a world of pain. He plays something very, very standard and steady. Obviously, there's these incredible nuances around these opening moves and why they're played in each order. But okay, let's just crack on with some normal chess here. Get to the interesting moments. The main point is white stands better. Center of the board under siege. Better pawn structure. And now, after bishop a6, rook d1, more tempos won, it's white who's first to the punch with the pressure on the queen side here. Bishop c5 is played. You can't start taking this queen. You open the a file. You open the rook. So Hikaru's already on the back foot. White's got the pressure. Queen c3 is an excellent move. Again, looking to develop the knight with tempo. It's all about the long-term pressure on these weakened pawns. Queen b6 therefore drops back, and now this knight rotates into the game, headed for the c4 square. Hikaru pushes this pawn. Now b3, not necessarily the best move. e5 could have been considered. You give the square, but you open the scope of the bishop. This was played though. Rook a d8 fights for the file, and now the seahorse is spawned. Hits the queen. So bishop takes, queen takes, e5 from Hikaru, but watch this. Rook takes on d1 is selected, and then a pawn structure which only a mother could love is adopted. Arguably rook d4 better here. Sure, you can take, but then pawn recaptures. You've got a passer, could be dangerous, some pressure on the center. Still white stands a smidge better, I guess because there's pawns to attack, right? You've also got control of the only open file, but it was an interesting way to go. In the game, rook takes on d1 played and a5, and you've got this trio of targets. Even though your bishop's not ideal, it has ideas of bouncing around, activating, and this is the big battle. Can Hikaru hold this structure together despite the immense pressure now piled on him? h4's on the board, h6 in response here, perhaps not the best. That one even becomes a target soon. g6, queen e3 hits that pawn, and Hikaru ignores it with the move queen to d8. And he's offering two pawns. You can either take here, or you can take here. Both moves have issues. If queen takes here, there's a check, and you pick up a loose rook. If rook takes here, well, again, you can swap off, and the check on the back rank's problematic, because after the bishop drops, this pawn drops. Black's doing fine. The king steps, there's knight g4 check, king h3. Now, you can't take just yet. This one's covering, but there is queen d7. Setting up discoveries. Black's got more than enough to be holding a draw, even a smidge better. The knight's hopping like a demon. So these are the problems with trying to win pawns. Andre therefore plays rook to d2, challenges the file, queen stepping to b6, bishop f1, going for the tried and tested plan, king g7. And now if you play the direct bishop c4, a4 is a really nice liquidating move. So this one shuts it down. Rook c6 covers the queen, looks for c4. This is an x-ray pressure. Rook c2 covers. Finally, Hikaru gets to explode the board. We see the exchange of the ladies. Takes is played. Knight dropping this pawn in the center. And although white stands a teeny weeny bit better, pressure going on here, Hikaru has very, very skillfully worked out that he should be able to steer this towards a draw. Don't take on g3. Rook takes e5, and then rook takes a5 is coming. Because you can't go rook a6. You'd drop two pawns, and white would have two connected passers running. So we didn't see this. We saw this. Rook takes on e5 played. Knight takes. This is what Hikaru's foreseen. He understands he's losing the A pawn, but he's winning the C pawn. He's one down. The big question becomes, is it enough to win this game? This is where you got to know your end games. This is where Lotus Chess can help. We see this rook spinning around behind the pawn. It allows the white king to get active, super active. A checkmate is threatened here. Don't sleep on that one. King d8 from Hikaru, king f6, and here a draw was agreed. Now it feels like there's more play in the game, right? And there is, but it does lead to a draw. These guys know their stuff so well, but here's a sample. Black gets their pawn going, white gets their pawn going. You get some kind of exchange of prisoners, and in the end, the black king can always run into this corner. You know, if you're left with an h-pawn. There's many different lines, but this is one sample. So even though white's a pawn down, king's too active, rook's too active, but equally black's got enough counterplay to not get mated or allow a queen. So 4 games, 4 draws, I'm afraid. that's your day 2 recap. Not dropping in quite so many jokes. It's a bit harder when you're covering so many games, right? But I hope you still enjoyed. Do check out Lotus Chess, link down in the description below, and have a look at the video on the screen if you want to see another epic game of chess. Cheers.